Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and of course a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend-Gard, your host, and I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School and a faculty fellow at the A.B. Friedman School of Business at Tulane. And I just want to quilt. So Ebony Love joins us again. She talks to us more about her business and the quilting industry and all kinds of amazing things. We're so thrilled to have her back for a little bit more time. Okay. All right,
can you hear me okay?
Yep, that's perfect. It's awesome.
Okay.
All right, cool. So let's make a list of what we want to chat about today.
Yeah. A list. A good list.
Yes.
Let's see. Well, I know when we got off the call last time, you were talking about like where Just Wanna Quilt is going next.
Yes.
And
I don't know where we're going. We're having a lot of conversations, and I don't know. So yes, let's talk about that. That'd be super great.
Yeah.
Other things that you want to chat about? I think that maybe by chatting about that, we'll be talking about the industry, because I think what we're trying to do is understand the industry through experiment, and the question is, where do we go from here? Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Let me make sure I've got everything that we need. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So, Just Wanna Quilt. So Just Wanna Quilt is an experiment, as you know, to understand both the quilting industry and also the role of social media and all these different things that are happening, influencers, giveaways, kind of the world that we are, by immersive research. So we started in February of last year. Well, we started in November when I went to market for the first time, so that was interesting. Then we did a bunch of interviews about this time last year, and then we started airing them in February. And so now we've got about 150 interviews, and we've interviewed all kinds of different people. We've had a couple of giveaways. We've grown the Facebook group to about 1,800, and we are now trying to sort of figure out what the next step is. And I'm not sure exactly. I mean, we've got a lot of ideas of the next step, but I guess, I don't know what successful is. That was the first part. I feel like we do a lot, and that I feel like I'm learning how extraordinarily exhausting this whole thing is. That would be the first lesson I learned. There's too much to do, not enough time. You and I have other lives and other jobs, and I'm kind of amazed at that. So did you think that was going to be the case when you started? Did it build, or did you always just feel like there was way too much to do every single day when you got up?
Well, I think it does build over time, because it depends on how much you want to be involved in the industry itself.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first started my business, I didn't really see the broader industry that was out there. So it wasn't until I kind of connected on the professional side, so I went pro,
Yeah.
And I think until you go that direction and you actually get involved in the trade side of it, you don't really see, everything that's involved. But certainly as a business owner, I think a lot of people come into the industry or come into this business and don't really see or understand all the parts of it that are business related.
Yeah.
So, because we look at it, a lot of people come into this from a hobby perspective.
They do.
Right?
They really do, don't they?
My hobby.
Hugely.
I love to do this.
Right.
Right.
I wish I could do it full time. Right. I wish I could make money from it. Right. Maybe it would support my quilting habit by having a little business. It's kind of this gradual it seems like they go two directions. One, either they go, I want to be a hobby, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I'm going to get way into charity quilting in kind of a massive way. They're quilting a lot, and there's got to be an avenue. They've made so many. There's only so many quilts that you can make for your family and friends. So then they kind of go either one or two directions, which is the hobby quilt, the charity, or entrepreneurial. That's what I've seen this year.
Yeah. So I think from the entrepreneurial side, I don't know that everyone considers themselves an entrepreneur or considers themselves a business owner. It's kind of like, I have this thing that I love and I want to do more of it.
Yeah.
And so, which is fine, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that's just, that business owners just have to do. I don't think people realize how much time you spend on your computer, how much time you spend actually doing paperwork, and how little is involved in, actually making things.
Right. It's weird, right? I know. I saw a picture of Cheryl Sloboda that she had made something recently. I was like, wow, you got extra time. Like, how did that happen? It's like craziness. Yeah. And every time, like when I go to make something, it's with the eye of, people ask me, are you having fun? Well, I have fun doing this, but it's a different kind of fun. But when I go to make something, I have to think about, what is my end goal for this thing? Yeah.
Is this going to a magazine? Am I targeting this for a class? Am I going to do an online video? Like, what is this thing? Like, what's the ultimate purpose of this thing? Like, everything has to have a purpose. Yeah. Because of the time that it takes. It's not just, I very rarely do making just for fun, like just to do it. Yeah. And I think that's the part that gets lost when you decide to go pro. So interesting, isn't it? So we've seen that this year. We also see that everybody's doing this. There's so much there's so many component parts to it. Obviously a website, but then there's Facebook and Instagram and the blog and newsletters. And I think it's just, for me, a lot. I mean, I just feel like the sort of what the early 21st century world is, there's just a lot of busy work. There's a lot of work. Do you feel that way at this point? Oh, absolutely. And you have to pick and choose because there's, how many, the bottom line is you have to find a way to connect with your audience. Yeah. Right. So, depending on the type of business that you have or the type of involvement you have in the industry, it may be just local. Like if you're doing charity work, for example, that might just be, you need to connect with your local community. And maybe you guys have a Facebook group, just to kind of keep in touch, but there's not as much of a drive to, have all of these other online presences necessarily. But, it's a lot. And especially if you are trying to run a business that's purely online, that is very brand centric. Yeah. You have to be everywhere. Yeah. You can't just, you kind of have to go where your audience is. And sometimes it's hard to kind of find that. And then, and I guess the question is sort of like what's successful? Like is like in terms of like metrics, like is it personal to each business of like when like, I think that it's so interesting because I don't really understand sort of, are you trying to get the most, like our group is really solid. Like I really like the Facebook group and it's really just very organic, like people who want to be involved in a conversation and that's super great. But, I don't really understand what our goal is, I guess. Well, that's part of the project, which is funny because we're like, we don't sell anything. We're just like this thing. Yeah. I totally get that. And the podcast, it's totally great. But in terms of like when I talk to others about like, I just see like there's a lot of discrepancy. There's these ridiculously huge Facebook groups of like 30,000 or whatever. And then there's smaller groups. And I don't understand how to process that, I guess. Yeah, I think for a lot of folks, they focus on kind of the raw numbers. Like if I have 10,000 fans, like that's the number that I want to get to. But I look at things that are more important just based on the type of audience that I want to attract to me. Yeah. I'm more focused on engagement. Yeah. And interaction. So I think for your group in particular, I think you've got kind of two things going on because you call it the quilting army. So
right.
You expect it to be quite large, right? That kind of sets an expectation.
I guess.
That,
I mean, it was just it was kind of a joke. It was just kind of a joke. There was only like two of us. We were like, we're the quilting army. Like, it was just like kind of funny, because like it wasn't really that army like. Now we're like actually, I don't know. So, will we ever get structure and all that kind of stuff? I'm not sure. I mean, I like kind of what it is now, but yeah.
But you do have to be careful because the bigger the group is, the more unruly it is, and the harder it is to kind of keep the, keep the social, the things that kind of that attracted the original people to it in the first place. Sometimes you can lose that when the group gets too big. So, but I think that, for Just Wanna Quilt, if you look at the Facebook audience, are people engaged? Like, who's starting conversations? Right. And if it's the people in the group starting the conversations more often than the moderator or the page owner or the group owner, those are things that you want to look at as as success, and then track those metrics. I do think growth is going to be, kind of a metric that you want to track, like how fast are we growing? Because that can sort of trigger other things that you want to do in terms of like, okay, at what point do we need to add another moderator? At what point do we want to start breaking, maybe you break the group up into, regional groups just to kind of keep them, keep the numbers, kind of more manageable. Those types of things. So that's something. But I think for your group, you have to kind of figure out what things are important to you and track those, and not worry so much about what other people are expecting your metrics to
be. That's really helpful. I think that is. I think that's super helpful. I'm just looking at our numbers now. I mean, I think. So I think the Facebook group is good. I think that we have a lot of participation, and we get, a few members every day. So we just kind of grow kind of organically. And we've got a lot of people engaged. And what I think I'm finding is that, so we did a giveaway, and our top posters were also our giveaway winners, which I thought was really interesting, that the engagement also mimicked who was doing the giveaway, who was so I thought that was really interesting. And so I thought that, one of the things is I feel like those people feel like we are connected, and so the question now I think is how to connect more people in our group, because I feel like like feeling like an individual, being an individual, that we care about you as a person matters a lot. And I'm seeing that as a result of sort of our numbers. When people feel connected, personally connected, they're posting more, they're involved more, they're part of the group more, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think some ways that you can kind of get that, that engagement is, actively asking for that kind of participation. I mean, you're always going to have a certain number of people who just lurk.
Yeah.
Their intention is never to say anything, never to call attention to themselves, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're enjoying it less. So that just may be their personality, and there's certain things that may draw them out. So, there could be, like, if you just pull the membership and say, what do you guys like, do you guys want to do a swap? Do you want to, do a quilt along together? How can we get you more engaged? How can we get you more involved? Are you guys collecting email addresses?
Yeah, I mean, we have in different contexts, but I think we're going to be doing something more active with our members. But like we have, let me show you the number. I'll tell you the number so far. So we have, I think we're close to 1,800 members, and on like our low days, we have 875 active members, and on our high days, 1,600 active members. So I think that's pretty good. I don't know how we could do better. So it seems like...
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. You've got like an 80%... 80%, active rate. Don't quote me on the math.
Yeah.
That's back of the calculator.
Yeah. So
back of the envelope.
I did not see a huge... I have to say that our numbers are just slowly growing. I didn't see a huge increase from festival. we just slowly grow all the time, which I think is interesting. I think maybe people know more about us, but I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Growing is hard. Did you find that growing's difficult? It's challenging. We put a lot out there, but I feel like, and maybe we're growing at a reasonable rate, but I think that's interesting. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at your growth rate, and I think it depends on, are you interested in only growing organically, in which case you are relying on people just kind of organically finding you, or people, word of mouth, essentially.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And I've found that, I tend to try a mix of things. So sometimes I will run an ad to get more, visibility to the page, to get more likes, to get more signups to the website.
Yeah.
So I do that periodically just to kind of, especially when I'm close to like a goal, so if I'm within like 100 of like like when I get to the point where I'm like within like 100 or 200 likes, I'm over 8,000 now on my own page. So when I get closer to 9,000, I'll probably run a like campaign just to, it's like a push, it's like a push over the top. But, but the content, like what are people attracted to, and making sure that that's the thing that you're kind of going after, and setting that expectation that once people find you, it's something that they're interested in, they want to continue.
Well, and I think that I'm really happy with the conversations that are happening, and I think they're engaged and thoughtful, and people are being kind and respectful and supportive, and so the environment that's been created is great. And we have a number of admins, and sort of if anything gets a little weird, they quickly notify me so we can kind of make sure that it doesn't get weirder. So I think the Facebook stuff is going fine. Like, I think it's great. Instagram, I'm not sure what we do with Instagram. Tell me about, do you use Instagram, and how do you use Instagram?
So I do use Instagram, and I have to say it's not necessarily the medium that I focus on the most, but because Instagram is very visual, and a lot of times the stuff that I have to say is not necessarily the visual side of it. So I have to figure out like how to make that, how to make that happen. But I have my Instagram post I push the Instagram post to Facebook. So sometimes, if nothing else, I'll just stick a picture on Instagram and it'll push to my Facebook page. But Instagram is, it's kind of a tough nut to crack. And I think companies, because I have a lot of brand relationships too. So that's mainly the reason I use Instagram, because that's how I can make visible to the companies that I have brand relationships with that I am doing something.
Got it.
To
right.
further that relationship.
No, and I'm on your Instagram page, and I can see that. So you're taking pictures of lots of different things and posting them, and we can do that. We can totally do that. We're still sort of, it's so funny because we keep having these conversations about Instagram, and we've got an Instagram account, but I've been really reluctant for some reason to dive in.
Yeah,
I think it's just...
one of the things that you can do is like win an episode, like come up with a standard graphic, and anytime you launch an episode, or anytime you air an episode, like post that graphic. It's like, hey, just want to quilt, on Just Want to Quilt this week, or, today, listen to this podcast with Marianne Fonz, we discussed blah, blah, blah. So you can do things that are, kind of like directing people.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Elsewhere, but you have to have a picture. Like, you can't.
Right. It's all picture based.
It has to have some. Yeah, it's all picture based. So Instagram is a little bit of a harder nut to crack for me, but and a lot of stuff that I do, like I want people to go to read my blog, or join my Designers and Makers Academy, or join my UFO orphan adoption. And it's more challenging to drive traffic on Instagram because you can't have active links. Right? You can only have the links in your profile, so it's a little bit harder to get traffic from Instagram.
That's interesting,
but certainly it piques the interest, and if people are interested, they'll take it further.
And do people know to go to wherever they need to go? Like, they're used to trying to find whatever it is that you've posted about. Does that make sense? Because you can't do links.
Yeah, so what I do is I just put the link in my profile. And so if I want them to go click something, I'll say, hey, go to the link in my profile. It's more effort, because they can't just click the link. They actually have to click my name and then go to my profile and then click the link. So it's a little bit more of an effort, but then that's engagement too. Like that's major engagement. If you can capture someone's attention, their interest, in that 3 seconds that you have to capture their interest.
Yeah.
And they're interested enough to kind of click it, and go through that effort.
So then are you changing the link at the top all the time? Is that sort of what you're doing to drive them where you want to go?
Yeah, it depends on, what I want them to see. Like sometimes, I think right now I have a link to a post that I wrote for Viking. And sometimes it just depends. Like if I have a quilt along that I'm starting up, I might change that link to the quilt along registration link. Yeah. Or it might just point to my blog. But yeah, I do that. There's other tools that you can use. I think it's a tool called InLinks. Okay. That you can, it allows you to have multiple links on your profile. I haven't hooked that up yet, but there are tools out there to help facilitate that.
Awesome. Okay, so tell me about, so we've got a couple of ideas of things that we might do. So I'd love your thoughts about that. And then also, we're starting to get kind of relationships with people, with companies. Tell me about sort of having relationships with companies and what we should be thinking about. I know I think you're involved with Viking and also, is it Island Boutique and a few others? Is that right? Am I right? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more about what that relationship is and how sort of what we should think about in terms of ambassadors to brands.
Yeah, so I think in terms of ambassadorships, it took me a while before I was actually willing to pursue ambassadorships. And part of it is because I'm one of those people who, as soon as something is like the thing to do or the popular thing, I'm like, I don't want to do it anymore. Mm-hmm. So I have a hard time just kind of committing to following the crowd or committing to one thing. Yeah. And the other thing is that I find that independence, because I considered when I first, kind of came in and started doing my die cutting stuff, that I was a consumer advocate. Mm-hmm. And as a consumer advocate, you can't be partial, to any one brand or company. You have to do what's best for the consumer. And that doesn't necessarily mean having favorites. Right. So for a very long time, I wouldn't really pursue brand relationships. I wouldn't, I would try to be very even-keeled about it. But you know what? I actually do have brand preferences, for my own quilting. What machine do I sew on and why do I sew on that machine? Or why do I use this particular tool? And it doesn't necessarily mean leveraging every single relationship that you have, everything. I don't have a rotary cutter brand ambassadorship and die cutting and got it. I don't do all of them. You can't do all of them. You have to kind of pick what are the ones that kind of where do you have a true affinity. And what I found was it's very flattering if someone approaches you about a brand ambassadorship. But you have to have a true affinity for that brand and a true preference and a true kind of reason that you want to advocate, because once you get into that relationship, it can be very challenging. If you really aren't a fan of that product, it can be very challenging to actually manage that brand relationship. So, and I think for JustWannaQuilt, because of, I think you guys have to be really, really careful about the brand relationships that you have, because, JustWannaQuilt to me implies that, it's kind of like everybody's welcome. And,
everybody's welcome. So we've been talking, we've been talking about that in interesting ways. So, and thinking through sort of so we've been, so Ron, my spouse, is teaching a new, new media and internet studies class. And so the kids in that class, who are all 19, 20, 21, have been doing special topics to think about sort of different aspects like brand, influencers and growing a audience and all that kind of stuff. So they've been doing presentations, and we're going to air that as part of the podcast. So we've had these interesting conversations about all of this, and then sort of talking to the Quilting Army about what I'm learning from these kids that have a totally different perspective on sort of the world in this incredibly weird way. So what am I thinking about? Well, I'm thinking, yes, it's nice to have brand sponsors. That's great. And we can talk more about what it means to be an ambassador. I'd like to know more about that. But I also think we are the Army, and we like lots of things. So the question is exclusivity versus awareness of things. So, like, do you have to choose?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we love lots of things. And so it really is a question of sort of what are we? I also feel like as we're starting to talk to people about being ambassadors or whatever, that I really don't want it to be like me as ambassador. That's not really what this project's about. And very often, at least in this industry and maybe in the world usually, that there's a kind of like personality driven kind of thing. Like people want it to be about like me. And it's really not about me, right? We have Gigi and we have Edith and we have all these different people that do different aspects of the project. And so thinking about what a brand ambassador is for the project for JustWannaQuilt and making sure that it becomes about like the group as opposed to a personality. So that's one of the things we're thinking about as well. And then you get a whole bunch of, so I put out a call to say, would people want to be, I don't know what I called it, but I didn't really explain what it would be, but which I kind of like. So I put out a poll of like, would you want to be representing, JustWannaQuilt? And I got about 100 of them that were like curious. So I thought that was really interesting. And again, sort of thinking through what does that mean? But taking kind of the way the makeup, all that makeup stuff, either there's like really famous people pushing makeup or there's a lot of average people, regular people pushing it. And so the question is kind of, what are we exactly? And I think we are just the masses. Like we are representative of the buying public,
Yeah, and it seems to me like because there is an aspect of this that is where you are a media and publishing company, right? So, I mean, maybe you don't see yourself as a media publishing company, but that's kind of like where...
I think that's where we're headed. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. And so in that, then you would have more type of advertisers and sponsors versus ambassadors. Versus
so tell me
being
the difference.
An ambassador of a particular brand.
Right. So and then there's a couple of brands that we really like that we've been talking to. Partly I like them because of the price point that it's much more of a everybody can play kind of brand, and that appeals to sort of who I am and sort of what this project's about. So I could see being still playing with lots of things and saying but for the project that we have this ambassadorship with a very reasonably priced X, whatever it is. So, because again, there is this kind of, what I worry with quilting is that the toys are expensive, and so that means that only certain people get to play. And so that's one of the things I'm really conscious of with this project is everybody gets to play. That's really important to what we're doing,
Yeah, where I see the difference is, and maybe there's not that much of a difference, but, as I think about it, but kind of where I see the difference is, let's take my Viking ambassadorship, for example, right? Yeah. So I am representing that brand on social media. I represent that brand when I go to a show or a class, I have a responsibility to make sure that I'm representing the brand in a positive light and, and really kind of being the face of that brand when I'm in public or when I'm on social media.
Right.
And so what I can't do is go around, proclaiming all the wonderful properties about a baby lock machine.
Right. But at the same time, I think what's interesting, and let me ask a question about this, because that really, I think like the fact that you're with Viking is super interesting because you have sewing machines in your studio. It didn't preclude you from having other machines that you're working on. And I thought that was really interesting that you can promote the Vikings, but that didn't mean that you like got rid of your Singer featherweight or you know what I'm saying? Like, do you feel that?
Well, here's how the distinction is drawn. So the company is actually Viking Singer Soft.
Oh. So it's really just the Janome that's sort of outside of the.
So Well, here's the thing, and this is something that when you negotiate, when you negotiate an ambassadorship, you have to think about those things.
Yeah.
So so I did ask specifically about my vintage machines because I don't have when I'm sewing, for my business, I'd say 99.99% of the stuff that I work on, it's all on a Viking machine, right? I have a serger, I have an embroidery machine, I have several sewing machines. My studio has opal sewing machines that that Viking generously provided for students here. So I am a Viking ambassador.
Yeah.
When I'm doing videos online, like I use the little, I have a little Singer featherweight, but it's a vintage machine, right? So I'm not out there.
So you're all in with the brand, is what you're saying.
I'm in with the brand, but here's the thing: like I have other branded vintage machines, but I'm not actively out there, promoting. Hey, you have to go and get, you have to go and get this Morse, machine from, 1957. Like that's not the purpose. Like they're like set dressing. It's a sewing machine collection.
Yeah.
So it doesn't preclude me from having other sewing machines. It's just that from a promotion perspective and a brand affiliation, like my public space is all Viking.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So.
All right. So
the other thing too is, I'm sorry, I just want to say this other thing. I also teach. So when I'm teaching at a national show, I don't get to choose what classroom I'm in.
Oh, interesting.
So I might very well be at a show teaching, and I'm teaching on other branded machines. And essentially what that means is like, that's not an endorsement necessarily of another brand.
Right.
But I also have to be mindful of, I'm not in that classroom promoting Viking.
Right. Yeah, right.
I'm not in there, bashing other sewing machine companies.
Right, you have to be respectful of that situation.
You have to be respectful, exactly. But in situations where I can control it, I have to make sure that because I have established this ambassadorship, that's part of my responsibility. And I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think I could do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I get it.
It's easy for me to be a Viking person because I've had Vikings, pretty much my whole,
you like Viking.
my whole sewing career, so
yeah.
That's really easy for me where, being ambassador to a different brand, not that I couldn't do it. It's just the Viking relationship was very easy for me. It made sense. It was more natural.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about what it means to be a brand ambassador in terms of like the relationship and how is it do you have a contract with them? Sort of what is a brand, sort of from the back end, what does a brand ambassadorship look like? So
there are, some of them are very, very different. Some of them are just as simple as just like, having, it's like a verbal, hey, you want to be an ambassador, and that's fine. But I far prefer the relationships that are contracted. So I have several contracted ambassador relationships, and it's like any other contract, you negotiate the terms. And so it's like, what are you getting in exchange for me representing your brand? And what is the brand getting in exchange for whatever, financial or, material goods, whatever that is. So you have to negotiate that. And it's different for every, for example, I think Island Boutique has an ambassadorship, and, I think, I don't know that I've ever formally been an Island Boutique ambassador, but I know that they get fabric. That's like one of the things. I don't know what the relationship, is. I don't know the details of the contract, but I do know that they get fabric. I don't know what they have to do in exchange for that, or how much fabric they get, or, what their other responsibilities are. But that's like one example. Other ambassadorships might be financial. Maybe they actually send you to, pay your transportation and expenses to go to a conference, or, maybe you're filming commercials for them, or, there's a variety of things, and it's just all in what you negotiate.
Yeah. Interesting. Super interesting. All right, that sounds interesting. And these ambassadorships are in the contract. Are there? You agree? It sounded like from what you were saying that you agree to certain, like I'm allowed to do certain things, like I can use other machines if I'm in a classroom, or is that just presumed in the sort of like sometimes you just can't help?
You don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to presume anything.
Interesting.
You have to be, because anytime that you are, it's because basically what you're doing is you're saying, I am willing to focus on this company only in this specific area.
Yeah.
And you have to be, and so you have to consider like all those things. Like I had to look at, I'm also a handy quilter educator.
Yeah.
Right. So how does that work?
Right.
Because Viking makes, they make long arm machines,
right.
and Handy Quilter makes sewing machines. So how does that work?
Right.
So it's a fine line. So you can't assume any of those things. You have to talk about all those things and have that clear understanding, because misunderstandings can really ruin relationships.
Yeah. And what do you think a brand, like on the brand side, what are they looking for? Like what makes you a good ambassador from the brand side?
I think it's a lot of it I think is intangible, because it's not like you can, sort of say, I'm going to increase sales by X dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
A lot of it is it's brand awareness.
Yeah.
It is brand affinity. It's brand education. So helping people understand, like when a new product is on the market, what is that? Like when I got the Epic, it's like, okay, well, can you help educate people on what the features are and what are you using and how are you using it? And
right.
helping people to understand that, so that it's not just Viking saying we have this really fantastic machine.
Yeah.
I'm picking on Viking a lot, but it's like that's the one that I can.
No, it's a good example.
I sew on my Viking every single day, and so it's like, what can you do on those things, and really educating the public on, it's not just the company saying this is a really great product, or we're a really great brand, or we have, whatever it is. It's other people saying that too. So a lot of it is just that personal connection to some, like a real person who says,
right.
I think this is a good product and you should participate in this experience too.
Got it. And so
I think that's a lot of it.
And with these brand ambassadors, do you feel like you wait for the companies to come to you, or do you go to them to say, hey, I'm using your Vikings in all these videos. I think this would be a good partnership, sort of. What do you think, what's the best strategy with and those that are coming, it's kind of like, some are coming to you. Do you really want, you know what I mean? Like, how do you choose, or how do you sort of do that initial dance with companies?
Yeah, I've had both situations where companies have approached me and situations where I've approached the company. I think you have to see, where does it make sense? Yeah. And I don't necessarily want to be like a brand ambassador for like 50 companies. Like that's a lot of,
that's a lot of work.
I know that's an exaggeration, but it's a lot of work. I have to see what works what can I fit into my natural work stream.
Yeah.
Because for me, I have limited time, right? I can't just like do, 8 million things just because it looks good. Like it has to fit into my natural work stream, and I have to be able to deliver like what is expected. And I fail at this a lot. I'm not necessarily like the best brand ambassador that I could possibly be. I have work to do.
Yeah, it's a lot.
On that, and so you do have to be. It's a lot, and so you do have to be mindful of not taking on too many things.
Yeah.
Because it sounds really good, it looks good on the resume, but if you're not actually doing
the work
and delivering what's expected, then that can be ruinous as well.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the flip side. Let's say you don't have an ambassadorship, but you're using the Viking in videos all the time. Do you feel like I feel weird about that at this point, right? So do you feel like it's okay to be promoting a brand that you're not an ambassador to because that's the brand you have? It seems like they're getting a bunch of cultural capital without that relationship in place, but that's the machine you use. So I don't know. Did you feel like that before the Viking relationship?
No, because, it's the product. It's like if you're naturally using a product, and here's the thing, like, you can't turn every single relationship into what am I going to get out of this? Right. I mean, some people do that.
I think it was more like not like, so because I didn't want people to think I'm being like rude or something. It wasn't really that I felt like, what am I going to get out of it? It just made me kind of feel a little uncomfortable because like, I know that people did buy a machine because I was, we talked about, and like I love Juki, so we were talking about that, and I know that people bought them, and I feel like that's great, like, that's fine, but I felt like, is that okay? I don't know, I just felt like the reverse of it, of like, who am I to be talking about this machine or using this machine, or I don't know. I even felt that weird about like what fabric we were going to recover things in the booth, because suddenly like people were like, oh, and we did get it from Free Spirit, and so that made me feel better that we, you know what I'm saying? But it suddenly we're like, it muddies the relationship a little bit because people may presume we have a relationship or we don't have a relationship. I don't know. It just seemed weird. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. I kind of see what you're saying, because it's an implicit endorsement.
Yeah,
right? Like,
it is. It is.
So if people see, once you reach a certain level of celebrity, if people see you using things,
right,
that implies endorsement.
Right.
Right. So you do want to be
that's my like
that,
legal
so
entrepreneurial hat of like, and maybe that's okay. Like I used to be like, okay, well, this is what I'm working on today, and it's this pattern. But now it's like, okay, well, now you know what I mean. I feel a little more hesitant to share stuff because I feel like there is a ruler I love right now, right? And now I'm not sure what to do about that. Usually I'd just be like, oh my gosh, I have this most incredible ruler that we got. Is that okay? Like, just talk about things and not worry about that part? Or do you feel more cautious as people are listening more? Because when nobody's listening, it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah. Well, and I guess it depends on like how, like if you are telling, like if you have, I don't know if you have advertisers at this point. I know you have like sponsors, but like if you have advertisers and you say like, you have to pay, you're paying money for us to mention your product a certain number of times in a certain number of places in a certain number of ways. And then, and then you're kind of giving that away to other companies. I can see where that would be kind of a hard,
and we haven't done any, I mean, people are still giving us product and donating product to us. And that's great because we're researching it and learning about it and experiencing it and, sending it on to other people to use. That's kind of what we do. But it did sort of make me wonder, is like, I don't know, like a lot of the people, I mean, I don't know. So that's kind of where we're at. So that's kind of brand stuff. So we're kind of, there's a pattern I really like right now. And it's like, okay, well, now what do I do? Like, do we try to like make a deal with the designer or let them know that we're going to be like saying a lot about them or like, you know what I mean? Like it's this whole kind of like, do we try to do affiliate linking? Do we not worry about that? Because we're an experiment, we're more about experimenting with the medium rather than like, making money isn't the whole goal for us, at least for me. I mean, money is always great, but really it's sort of immersive and experiencing it. So now we're at this next level of like, well, what should we be experiencing? And I'm not really sure at that point. So that's what we're sort of struggling with is to think about it. Yeah.
Well, and maybe what you do is you say like, okay, well, I have this pattern and, we want to talk about it and rave about it. And so maybe what you do is you give that designer a heads up, and say, hey, we're going to be featuring your pattern today. And just kind of give them a heads up. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't see a problem like saying, and if you wanted to, this isn't an obligation, but if you wanted to like do a giveaway or something, we can put that up. And then maybe ask, like, is there something from your perspective that you would like us to mention, when we talk about your pattern? And then that way it's not like you can't do it.
But just be transparent and let people know and see how that goes.
Yeah. And it's fine to like change direction later, but if you're experimenting, try it that way.
Yeah,
and just say, what, we have these.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds good. Okay, so that's all the brand stuff and the endorsing stuff and the influencer stuff. So we're learning about sort of how can we be a massive influencing group on like all the things we love. And since we're like lots of people with lots of different loves, how do we negotiate all this? So that's what we're kind of thinking about at the moment with the kind of. We may have official brands that we are ambassadors for, but that doesn't mean that we don't. Because quilters, here's my thought. Quilters buy everything, right? We do love certain brands. Like you could be a Viking girl. I could be a Juki girl. Like we love different things, right? But we also buy all kinds of thread. We buy all kinds of, and so I think that also is part of it, is that we recognize that we may be loyal, but we also buy a lot and from lots of different spaces. And so I think that's what we're trying to mimic, I guess, in the and
people, it's kind of like, buying a car, like, right? Like they all are point A to point B. At the end of the day, they all get you from point A to point B. Yeah. But the brand that you choose is the one that's comfortable for you. Yeah. Right? It's, and that showcases the things that are important to you. So there's going to be room for all of that, all different price points, all different features, all different, approaches to, do I really connect with what this company, is doing, on a different level. So I think it's perfectly okay. Like it's okay to like different things.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. We like lots of things. And I think our brand is really about the things that we like, not the things we don't like. Like if you don't like it, that's fine, but that's not really the space that we're operating in. What we really want is like, why do you love this thing? Tell us more about it. Right. We're kind of all about kindness and positivity. You can get like, this ruler doesn't work because from someplace else. We're not really about that. We're really about like why you love this particular thing. So that's kind of, at least so far, that's been our focus is, and that you really do have to love it. Not just, we don't want to be in a situation where we're fake or that we're just promoting things to promoting it. That we do have, there just has to be kind of authentic voice.
Authenticity is so important. Yeah. And I've had brand relationships where it didn't feel authentic, and those were so hard to kind of manage through. And at the end of the day, it's like, you know what, I'm not serving myself, and I'm not doing this company any favors. If I can't be enthusiastic and honest about it. It's not like you can't fake it. You can't fake brand affinity.
No, I think especially not right now. You probably could in 1920s, but
right.
Not right now. We're not. We live in sort of an authentic world that's kind of interesting in that way.
I like the idea of kind of the content aggregation. From the standpoint of like, here are. I don't know how you do it, but it's like, here's something you might be interested in. And here are, the people that we've, interviewed and links to their sites and, that type of thing. So that it's kind of a place where you can go to like connect in with.
I can't believe how fast that hour goes. You're amazing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I will sign up. Maybe what you should do is like sign up for a 1 hour time slot, sign up for a 2 hour.
It's totally true. Next time when you do it, Ebony, you have to sign up. Just like sign up and then sign up again because we run out of time. You're amazing. Yeah. I adore you. You are so incredible, clever. And you're
so awesome.
I love it. I love our time together. So let's spend more time together. I'm supposed to talk with Cheryl. Maybe the three of us could chat about stuff. That would be fun too. Be really great.
Oh yeah, she's coming over. She's actually on her way here.
Okay.
We have a little business planning powwow thing.
Oh, fabulous! We'll say hi because I have to reschedule with her because there was chaos yesterday. So awesome! Yeah. I will talk to you soon. And you're wonderful. You're amazing.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
So you've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. And I'm Elizabeth Townsend Gard. If you like this podcast, keep listening. Also, we have a Facebook group. Come join us. We talk about a lot of things. We also have an Instagram account. And of course, most importantly, I really hope you get a chance to quilt today.